41 hours. That's how long Marlo Sutton had been counting the squeaks of her pink rain boots against cold concrete. One squeak, two squeaks, three squeaks. The darkness smelled like rust and mold and something chemical she couldn't name, but she knew the smell of fear. It tasted like copper, like the blood from her split lip where she'd bitten the bald man hard enough to make him scream. 1472 Ashmont Drive. 1472 Ashmont Drive. 1472 Ashmont Drive. Her father had taught her this when she was 5 years old, sitting on the back of his Harley, her small hands gripping his leather vest, the Hells Angels patch rough under her fingers. If you ever get lost, baby girl, you say your address until someone safe finds you. And you remember what I taught you. Suttons don't break. Mars was 8 years old and she had made her father a promise. Suttons don't break. The rope burned her wrists raw. She'd been working on it for hours now, rubbing the nylon against the sharp edge of concrete she'd found along the wall. The men who took her didn't know she'd found it. They didn't know a lot of things, like how her daddy had taught her to watch everything, remember everything, find the weakness in any situation. Derek, the bald one with 3.5 fingers on his right hand, favored his left leg. Old injury, ankle probably. He winced every time he put weight on it. Vincent, the one with the snake tattoo crawling up his neck like it was trying to choke him, checked his phone every 17 minutes. She'd counted. He was scared of something. Maybe scared of whoever had sent him. Mars pulled at the rope again. It gave a little more. Not much, but enough. 11 months earlier, on a Tuesday that started like any other Tuesday, Callaway Sutton watched a man die. The truck stop off Interstate 5 smelled like diesel fuel and burnt coffee and the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from driving through the night. Callaway had pulled in at 2:17 in the morning, his Harley's engine ticking as it cooled his mind on getting home to Mars before she woke up for school. He was walking toward the diner entrance when he heard the voices. Low, angry, the kind of angry that comes right before violence. 3 men stood behind the building. Callaway saw them through the gap between the dumpster and the chain-link fence. 1 man on his knees, 2 standing. The kneeling man was begging. Please, I have kids. I have a family. Please, the man who pulled the trigger didn't hesitate. 3 shots. Center mass. Execution style. The sound cracked through the night like the world breaking open. The kneeling man fell forward, didn't move again, would never move again. Callaway saw everything. The shooter's face. The way he smiled before he fired like he was doing something he enjoyed. The snake tattoo on the second man's neck. The burn scar on the shooter's left cheek, 4 inches long. The tissue puckered and shiny even in the sodium lights. The way they both turned, scanning the parking lot for witnesses. Callaway Sutton was a lot of things. Hells Angels member for 19 years. Father to an 8-year-old girl who wore his vest every Friday and called it lucky. Brother to 96 men who would ride through hell for him if he asked. But he was also a man who believed in a code. You see evil, you stand against it. Even when standing costs everything. He called 911 from his cell phone. Hands shaking, voice steady, described the shooter, the snake tattoo, the license plate on the black Escalade they climbed into. Everything. 2 weeks later, the FBI knocked on his door. Special Agent Rebecca Torrens, 20-year veteran, eyes that had seen too much and believed too little. Mr. Sutton, we need you to testify. The man you saw is Luis Navarro, cartel enforcer. We've been trying to build a case against him for 6 years. Your testimony puts him away for life. Callaway looked at Mars sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework. 3rd grade math. She was humming while she worked, some song she'd learned at school. She looked up at him and smiled. Daddy, what's 8 times 7, 56, baby girl. Callaway knew what testifying meant. The Sinaloa cartel didn't leave witnesses breathing, but he also knew what not testifying meant. That evil men won, that his daughter grows up in a world where good people looked away. I'll testify, he told Agent Torrens, but I need protection for my daughter. Of course, Torrens said. We'll arrange protective custody, safe house, 24-hour surveillance. She'll be completely secure. Completely secure lasted exactly as long as the paperwork. The FBI budget had been cut. Agents were spread thin across 3 states. Protective custody meant a patrol car driving past Mars's school twice a day. It meant Calloway's cell phone number on a federal watch list. It meant promises that dissolved like smoke the moment Agent Torrens walked out his door. The trial was set for Monday, November 18th, 3 days from now. If Calloway testified, Navarro would spend the rest of his life in a federal supermax prison. If Calloway didn't, the cartel had made the terms painfully clear through a text message to a burner phone that appeared on his doorstep. Recant or your daughter dies. Calloway burned the phone. Didn't tell anyone. Not even Bones, especially not Mars. 8-year-olds shouldn't have to carry their father's fears. But every morning when he dropped her at Riverside Elementary, he watched until she disappeared through the doors. And every afternoon at 3:40, he was there waiting. Early. Always early, except on November 15th, a Friday. When a repo client showed up at the garage 30 minutes before dismissal, and Calloway made a decision he would regret for the rest of his life, he called Malcolm Forge Forgesson. Brother, friend. The man Mars called Uncle Forge because he'd been there the day she was born, had held her when she was 10 minutes old, and still covered in the proof of her arrival, had promised her dead mother he'd always look out for this child. Forge, can you grab Mars from school? I'm stuck with a client. Of course, brother, I got her. Calloway trusted him. Why wouldn't he? Forge was family. He'd proven it 100 times. At hospital vigils and funeral processions and 3 a.m. calls, when Calloway's grief over losing his wife threatened to swallow him whole. Family. What Calloway didn't know was that Forge owed the Barona Casino $180,000. What he didn't know was that 2 men had visited Forge's apartment 3 weeks ago and explained in very clear terms what happened to people who didn't pay their debts to organizations connected to the Sinaloa cartel. What he didn't know was that Forge had been given a choice. Give us the girl's schedule, a recent photo, and the promise that you'll be nowhere near that school on Friday, November 15th. Or we cut off pieces of you until there's nothing left to bury. Forge chose survival, chose betrayal, chose to tell himself that the cartel just wanted to scare Calloway into recanting, that they wouldn't really hurt an 8-year-old girl, that he could live with himself after. He was wrong on all 3 counts. Silas Brennan didn't mean to see the kidnapping. He was just doing what he always did at 3:52 on a Friday afternoon. Sitting in the passenger seat of a 2004 Honda Accord with 247,000 miles on the odometer and a cracked windshield held together with packing tape, watching Riverside Elementary's dismissal like it was the most important thing happening in the entire world. In the back seat, his mother slept. Vera Brennan had worked the overnight shift at Rosie's 24-hour diner, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., came home, drove Silas to this parking spot across from the school, and collapsed into 4 hours of exhausted sleep while her son watched children who still had homes. They'd been homeless for 7 months, since the eviction notice, since the landlord changed the locks while they were at the grocery store and everything they owned became someone else's property to dispose of. Since their life became this car and a series of parking lots and the hope that maybe tomorrow would be different. Silas was 13 years old. He hadn't been to school himself in 186 days, but he watched this school every single afternoon. He knew every parent's car, knew which kids got picked up by grandparents, which ones walked home in groups, which teachers pulled dismissal duty. He watched because watching gave him purpose, because in a world where he'd lost almost everything, observation was the one skill nobody could take away. His mother had been a 911 dispatcher for 11 years before the budget cuts, before the city decided the experienced operators were too expensive and replaced them with software that couldn't hear the difference between scared and angry, couldn't catch the tiny details that saved lives. She'd taught Silas what she knew. Details matter, baby. The color of a car, the letters on a license plate, the shape of a scar. When everything goes wrong, details are the only things standing between life and death. Silas memorized everything now. License plates, faces, routines. The way people moved when they were nervous versus confident versus lying. It was survival, pattern recognition, the difference between normal and wrong. And at 3:52 p.m. on November 15th, 2024, everything went wrong. The white van circled the block once before parking. Silas noticed his broken wristwatch read 3:47. It had been frozen at that time for 2 months, the second hand stuck at the 11, but he checked it anyway. Compulsion. Comfort. Math to keep his mind calm. At 5 minutes, 3:52, the van was a Dodge Ram 2019 model, white, Virginia plates, 7RX4138, Enterprise Rent-A-Car magnet on the driver's side door. But the magnet said Fairfax, Virginia. Wrong state. A rental from the East Coast driven all the way to Sacramento. Why who drives a rental van 2,600 miles instead of flying? Someone who doesn't want their real vehicle on camera. Someone who needs to disappear after. Silas filed it away, watched. The driver's door opened. The man who stepped out was 6'2", maybe 230 pounds. Military build, shoulders that spoke of gyms and discipline and violence as a practiced skill, black leather jacket, Timberland boots, and crawling up his neck visible even from 60 feet away, a snake tattoo, black ink. The head reached his jawline. The tail disappeared under his collar. Silas's pulse quickened. This isn't apparent. The passenger door opened. Second man, shorter, 5'10", 175. Bald head shaved clean enough to reflect the afternoon sun. Navy blue windbreaker zipped to the neck despite the mild November weather. White Adidas sneakers, the left one dragging slightly. Limp, old injury, and when he reached for the van's sliding door, Silas saw it. The right hand, missing the pinky finger. Clean amputation, long healed. These aren't teachers. These aren't anyone who belongs here. Silas watched the snake tattoo man walk toward the school entrance. Watched him scan the crowd of children flooding down the concrete steps. Watched his eyes lock onto someone. Something. Specific. And then Silas saw her. The little girl in the oversized leather vest. Hell's Angels patch. Too big for her tiny frame, but she wore it like armor. Like pride. Pink rain boots with unicorn stickers. Denim overalls. One strap unhooked. Blonde hair and 2 braids tied with red ribbons. She was carrying an art project. Construction paper. Crayon drawing. A motorcycle with flames coming off the wheels. The flames were still wet. Smudging. The snake tattoo man said her name. Marlo. The little girl stopped. Turned. Her face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion. Recognition of wrongness. Fear. I don't know you, she said. Her voice carried across the parking lot. Clear. Certain. This is wrong and I know it. She took a step backward. Her pink rain boots squeaked against the wet concrete. Squeak. The sound Silas would hear in nightmares for months. Your daddy sent me to pick you up, sweetheart. There's been an emergency. Lie. Silas knew lies. His mother had taught him. Liars smile too much or not enough. This man's smile showed too many teeth. His eyes didn't crinkle at the corners. Eyes that were smiling for real crinkled. Always. This man's eyes were flat, dead. The smile was painted on. No, the little girl said. Daddy picks me up, or Uncle Forge. She took another step back. The art project trembled in her hands, the crayon flames bleeding together now. Ruined. The hand that grabbed her arm was the size of a dinner plate, fingers like steel cables. It squeezed hard enough that Silas saw her face twist in pain, hard enough to leave a bruise the exact shape of his grip. Oval, dark purple, a mark she'd carry for weeks. Daddy, the scream tore through the air like sheet metal, ripping. Daddy. The art project fell from her hands. Construction paper hit the wet sidewalk. Crayon flames scattered. The motorcycle her father would never see. The sliding door of the van flew open. The bald man grabbed her other arm. She fought. God, she fought. Kicked. Bit. Sank her teeth into the snake tattoo man's wrist until she tasted copper. Until she saw the rage flood his eyes. Until he yanked her into the van with enough force that her head bounced off the metal floor. The door slammed shut. White van, Virginia plates, 7RX4138. The engine revved, tires squealed, and Marlo Sutton, 8 years old, wearing her daddy's lucky vest every Friday, just like she always did, disappeared into the November gray. Silas was already running. He threw open the car door so hard it bounced against its hinges. His mother jerked awake in the back seat. Silas where? But he was gone. 60 feet to the school entrance. 50. 40. His sneakers held together with duct tape slapped against the pavement. Left sole flapping, two short jeans exposing his ankles to the November cold. Gray hoodie with a hole in the left elbow, billowing behind him. He reached the school entrance 19 seconds after the van pulled away. Watched it turn left. Left at Folsom Boulevard. Filed it away. Police will search right. They always search wrong. Pattern recognition. Assumption bias. Left is the detail that matters. Mrs. Herrera, the dismissal teacher, was helping a kindergartner tie his shoe. Silas grabbed her arm. His fingers couldn't close all the way around. She was soft, well-fed, safe. Everything he wasn't. A girl just got kidnapped. His voice cracked. 13 years old, but in this moment, he sounded younger. Desperate. White van, Virginia plates. 7RX4138. Two men, one with a snake tattoo on his neck, the other bald with a missing pinky finger on his right hand. Well, Herrera's face cycled through expressions. Surprise, confusion, dismissal. The last one hit hardest. Honey. She pulled her arm back like he'd burned her, like his poverty was contagious. That's Callaway Sutton's daughter. She probably got picked up by family. We can't call 911 every time I saw them grab her. Silas's voice broke. She screamed, "Daddy," loud enough for everyone to hear. Check the security cameras. Please. Mrs. Herrera exchanged a look with Miss Oakes, the younger teacher, standing 10 feet away. That look. Silas knew it. He'd seen it in grocery store parking lots when he asked if there were day-old donuts, in library lobbies when he tried to use the bathroom, in every place where a homeless kid didn't belong. The look that said, problem. Not my problem. We'll handle it, Mrs. Herrera said. You need to leave school property. What happened next would haunt Silas Brennan for the rest of his life. He didn't leave. He ran toward the principal's office instead, burst through the doors, past the secretary who called after him. Young man, you can't. But he was already through the inner door, into the office where Dr. Patricia Holbrook sat behind a desk with a bronze plaque that read, "Student safety is our priority." A girl was kidnapped. Silas was crying now, tears he couldn't control streaming down his face. Hot, shameful, weak, white van, Virginia plates, 7RX4138. Two men, one had a snake tattoo crawling up his neck. The other was missing his right pinky finger. They grabbed her at 3:52. She was wearing a leather vest, Hell's Angels patch, pink rain boots. Please, Dr. Holbrook was 52 years old. She had been principal for 14 years. She had 487 students and 32 faculty, and a budget shortfall that kept her awake at night in a school board meeting on Tuesday, where she'd have to explain why test scores were down for the third consecutive year. She looked at the boy in front of her, homeless, dirty, crying, shouting about kidnapping and snake tattoos and license plates he couldn't possibly have memorized. And she made a decision. The wrong decision. Young man, her voice was ice. We don't tolerate false alarms. That was Callaway Sutton's daughter. I know her family. She's fine. If you disrupt this school again, I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. I'm not lying, I saw security. The word hit Silas like a slap. Escort this boy off campus. If he returns, detain him for the police. Two security guards appeared behind him. Hands on his shoulders, pressure that said, move or be moved. Silas looked at Dr. Holbrook. At the bronze plaque behind her, at the framed certificate on the wall that read, Commitment to Excellence in Child Welfare. Please, he whispered, just check the cameras. Call her dad. Please, we have protocols for emergencies. Dr. Holbrook stood. We don't need a homeless child causing panic with wild stories for attention. The guards walked him out, not roughly, but firmly, the way you remove trash, the way you erase a problem. Behind him inside that school, not a single person picked up a phone. Not a single person checked the security cameras. Not a single person called Callaway Sutton to tell him his daughter was gone. An hour later, Silas sat on the curb across from Riverside Elementary, his head in his hands, his body shaking, cold, adrenaline, the crushing weight of failure pressing down on his chest until he couldn't breathe. He had seen everything, remembered everything, every detail perfect, every detail useless. Because nobody believed him. Because he was homeless. Because he was nobody. The girl was gone. She screamed daddy, and he had done nothing. Not enough. Not nearly enough. In his mind, he replayed it. Snake tattoo, missing finger, Virginia plates, 7RX4138, left turn at Folsom. Every detail cataloged. Every detail meaningless because the only people who could act had chosen not to. The rumble of a motorcycle cut through his spiral. Silas looked up. The man getting off the Harley was 61 years old, solid build, shaved head, gray beard braided like something out of a Viking saga. His right arm covered in tattoos, angel wings wrapping around what looked like badge numbers. His leather vest bore a patch Silas recognized from the little girl's vest. Hell's Angels, Sacramento chapter. The man was scanning the school entrance, looking for someone, hunting. Silas's instinct said, run. His brain said, this is one of them, the people the little girl belonged to. Bikers, dangerous, everything he'd been taught to fear. But the little girl had worn that patch like it meant something, like it meant family, like it meant she was loved. Silas stood. His legs felt like water. His duct-taped sneakers shuffled against the asphalt. Shuffle scuff, each step taking him toward the most terrifying-looking man he had ever seen in his life. 60 feet, 50, 40. The man turned, saw Silas, saw the tears still wet on his cheeks, saw the hoodie too thin for November, saw the sneakers falling apart at the seams, saw the way this boy's shoulders hunched forward like he was bracing for a blow, saw the way his hands clutched his stomach like he was trying to hold himself together. And something in his expression shifted. Luther Bones Carver had been a homicide detective for 23 years. Sacramento PD. He had interviewed 1,000 witnesses, had learned to read body language the way most people read street signs, micro-expressions, tells. The difference between someone lying and someone desperate for someone to believe them. What he saw in this homeless boy's posture told him everything. This kid isn't looking for trouble. This kid found trouble and he needs someone to believe him. Silas stopped 10 feet away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The November wind moved between them, cold, carrying the smell of rain coming. Then in a voice so broken, it barely qualified as sound pleas. Nobody will listen. She screamed daddy. She needed her daddy. Bones went completely still. His hands stopped mid-motion on the chrome of his motorcycle. His eyes locked onto Silas's with an intensity that should have been terrifying, but somehow wasn't. For 3 seconds, Silas counted them. The biker didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Then he stood. His knees cracked loud, like snapping twigs. He walked toward Silas with the measured pace of a man who had learned never to move fast toward frightened witnesses. Stopped 3 feet away. And then Luther Bones Carver did something that broke every assumption Silas had ever made about men who looked like this. He knelt, right there on the wet asphalt, got down on one knee so he was looking up at Silas instead of down, made himself smaller, made himself less. Son. His voice was low, steady, certain. Look at me. Silas looked. I believe you. 3 words that cracked something open in Silas's chest. Something that had been locked tight since the eviction, since the first night sleeping in the Honda, since the world decided he didn't matter. Tell me everything. And Silas told him, not in fragments, not in the halting, uncertain way he'd told the teachers. In complete sentences, complete details, exactly as his mother had trained him. I saw them take her from the car across the street. White Dodge Ram van, 2019 model, Virginia plates, 7RX4138. Enterprise rent-a-car magnet on the driver's door, but the magnet said Fairfax, Virginia. Wrong state. They circled the block once before parking at 3:52 p.m. My watch is broken, but I know the gap. 5 minutes from when it stopped. Bones didn't interrupt, didn't question. Just listened with the focus of a detective who knew the difference between fabrication and truth. Kidnapper 1, 6'2", approximately 230 pounds, black leather jacket, Timberland boots size 13. I saw the print in the mud by the curb, snake tattoo on his neck, black ink. The head reaches his jawline, scar on his left cheek, about 4 inches, looks like a burn, southern accent when he spoke to her, Georgia or Alabama. I couldn't narrow it further. Bones's expression didn't change, but his breathing did. Faster, harder. Kidnapper 2, 5'10", 175, bald, shaved clean, navy blue windbreaker zipped to the neck, white Adidas sneakers, missing his right pinky finger. I saw it when he grabbed her arm. He limps on his left leg, ankle injury, slows his gait, makes it uneven. Cartel profile, Bones thought. Every detail matches the federal case files on Luis Navarro's crew. This kid didn't make this up. He can't have made this up. She was wearing an oversized leather vest, Hell's Angels patch, pink rain boots with unicorn stickers, denim overalls underneath. One strap was unhooked. She screamed daddy when they grabbed her. She dropped her art project, a crayon drawing, motorcycle with flames on the wheels. The van turned left at Folsom Boulevard. Silas's voice cracked on the last word. I tried to tell them, the teachers, the principal. Nobody believed me. They said I was lying for attention. They said because I'm homeless, I was causing trouble. They threatened to have me arrested. They told me to leave. His hands were shaking now, shaking so hard he had to clasp them together. I watched her get taken and I couldn't stop it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Bones put his hand on Silas's shoulder, firm, gentle, like an anchor. Silas. The biker's voice was rock steady. What's your name, Silas Brennan? Silas, listen to me very carefully. Bones pulled out his phone. You're not nobody. You're the only person who saw. The only person who remembered. The only person brave enough to keep trying when everyone else quit. He pressed a contact. 1 ring, 2. Marlo Sutton's father is alive right now because you didn't stop. A voice picked up on the other end. Yeah. Gunner, it's Bones. I need every brother within 100 miles at the clubhouse. Now. A pause. What's going on? Ironside's little girl was snatched outside her school 40 minutes ago. I've got an eyewitness. Kid with a photographic memory. Saw everything. White van, Virginia plates. Cartel profile on 2 kidnappers. They've got maybe a 41-hour window before they move her, before the trial Monday. The pause stretched for exactly 1 heartbeat. Say no more. We're coming. The line went dead, and that was it. No questions about proof, no demands for evidence, no concerns about legal complications. Just 4 words. Say no more. We're coming. The full machinery of brotherhood roaring to life. Within 20 minutes, Bones had called every Hell's Angels chapter within a 3-hour ride. Sacramento, Oakland, San Jose, Fresno, Stockton, 97 brothers answered. They didn't ask for proof, didn't ask for plans. They heard Ironside's kid is gone, and they dropped everything. Jobs, family dinners, sleep, climbed onto motorcycles and pointed them toward Sacramento like arrows toward a target. Silas watched the calls happen from the passenger seat of Bones's Harley. His mother had been briefed, gently, by a biker named Tank who treated Vera Brennan with more respect than she'd received in 7 months of homelessness, and she'd agreed to let Silas stay with Bones until the girl was found. You saved her life today, Bones had told Vera. Your son, he's a hero. We're going to make sure the world knows it. Vera had cried. Silas pretended not to notice. The Hells Angels clubhouse sat at 4200 Stockton Boulevard. Squat building, reinforced steel door. Windows you couldn't see through. By 5:30 p.m., the parking lot was filled with motorcycles, chrome polished, arranged in rows with military precision. Inside, 97 men in leather vests waited. They didn't look like the villains from Silas's imagination. Some were old, gray beards, weathered faces, hands that had seen decades of labor. Some were young, sharp eyes, restless energy, phones out and ready. Some dressed like construction workers, others like mechanics, a few like accountants. But every single one wore the same patch, and every single one had answered the same call. At the head of the room stood Calloway Ironside Sutton, Mars's father, 41 years old, built like a brick wall. Hazel eyes that looked exactly like his daughter's, except now they were rimmed with red. His hands kept clenching into fists he couldn't seem to control. Bones brought Silas forward. Tell them what you told me. 97 bikers went silent. Silas had never had 97 people listen to him in his entire life. For a moment his throat closed, the fear of judgment, of disbelief, of more dismissal threatening to swallow him whole. Then he looked at Calloway, at the Hells Angels patch that matched the one Mars wore, at the terror in a father's eyes. And Silas told them everything. The van, the plates, the physical descriptions, the timeline, the direction they turned. Every detail his memory had captured laid out like evidence on an invisible table. When he finished, the room stayed quiet. Then a man in the back, old gray, with the bearing of someone who had seen everything, twice spoke. That's a photographic memory. Samuel Preacher Hollis, 67 years old, founding member of the Sacramento chapter. His voice carried weight. I've seen it twice in my life. The kid's not making it up. He can't make that up. Another man stepped forward. Kevin Bite Tran, 31, heavy-set, pale complexion of someone who spent his life in front of screens. If the van's an enterprise rental, their fleet has GPS tracking. I can get access. Might take a few hours, but I can find it. Do it. Calloway's voice was gravel. A third man, Raymond Doc Fisher, 63, gray ponytail, tattoo of a caduceus on his forearm. If she's been held without food or water for over 24 hours, we're looking at dehydration. Maybe worse. When we find her, I'll need to assess her fast. A fourth, Alan Professor Briggs, 47, clean-shaven, kind eyes that seemed out of place among so much leather. And after, she'll need someone who knows how to talk to traumatized kids. I've got credentials. I'll be there when she wakes up. Calloway looked around the room. At the brothers who had dropped everything, at the specialists already forming a rescue plan, at the homeless boy who had given them hope. 41 hours. That's what we've got before they move her. Before the trial Monday. Before I'm supposed to testify against the man who ordered this. He paused. Money won't get my daughter back. Lawyers won't get her back. The cops didn't even know she was missing until I called them 30 minutes ago. And they told me, his voice cracked, they told me to wait 48 hours before filing a report. The room growled, low, dangerous, but we're not waiting. Calloway straightened. Bones is running point. Bite is tracing the van. Doc is prepping a med kit. Professor is on standby for Mars. Every other brother here, you're spreading across this city. Door to door if we have to. Someone saw that van. Someone knows where they took her. He looked at Silas. And this kid who everyone dismissed, he's going to help us find my daughter. Silas's chest tightened. You don't have to, Calloway said. You've already done more than anyone had a right to ask. I want to help. Silas's voice was small but sure. I remember everything. Maybe I'll see something else. Maybe I'll remember something that matters. Calloway stepped forward. He was a foot taller than Silas, twice his weight, covered in tattoos and leather, and every visual cue that has said dangerous. But when he knelt, got down on one knee, just like Bones had done, his expression was nothing but gratitude. Thank you, he whispered, for seeing her, for not stopping. Silas didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. And the hunt began. By midnight, 97 motorcycles had crisscrossed Sacramento like a web. Bones coordinated from the clubhouse a map of the city spread across a pool table, red pins marking every reported sighting, every dead end, every place where the trail went cold. His detective training had kicked in. Methodical, precise, patient, while every other instinct in his body screamed to tear the city apart brick by brick. Silas sat beside him. The boy hadn't slept. Hadn't eaten, though Doc had tried to push a sandwich into his hands twice. He stared at the map with eyes that seemed older than 13, replaying everything he'd seen, searching for something he might have missed. The van turned left at Folsom, Silas said for the 5th time. Left. The police are searching the east side of the city, but they went left, toward the industrial district. Bones nodded. Bite's working on the GPS. Enterprise systems are locked down tight, but he found a back door through their insurance provider. Another hour, maybe 2. She doesn't have hours. Bones looked at Silas, at the desperation in his voice, at the way his broken watch kept catching the fluorescent light every time he checked it. A compulsion he couldn't control. She's alive, Bones said. The cartel doesn't want her dead. They want her as leverage. As long as Calloway's testimony is hanging over that trial, they need her breathing. But if he doesn't testify, then they promise to release her. Or that's what they'll say. Bones's voice dropped. But men like these don't leave witnesses. That's why we find her before Monday. That's why we don't leave this to the cops. They'll follow protocol. Protocol takes time. Protocol gets children killed. Silas's hands clenched. I should have run faster. You ran as fast as you could. I should have grabbed her. You're 100 pounds soaking wet against 2 cartel enforcers. Bones turned to face him fully. You would have died and she'd still be gone. You did the only thing that could actually save her. You watched. You remembered. You refused to stop talking even when every adult in that school told you to shut up. He pointed at the map. This hunt, these 97 brothers riding through the night. None of this happens without you. The police don't have the description. The FBI doesn't have the plate number. We have it because you gave it to us. Silas's eyes welled up. He didn't let the tears fall. 41 miles away in a warehouse that smelled like rust and chemical despair, Mars was counting. Hour 22. She'd kept track by reciting her address. Each recitation marked 15 minutes. She'd done it 88 times now. 1472 Ashmont Drive. 1472 Ashmont Drive. The words had become a rhythm, a meditation, the thing keeping her sane. The rope on her wrists had loosened. Not much, but enough. She'd been rubbing it against the concrete edge for hours, the nylon fibers fraying strand by strand. Her wrists bled. The rope was pink with it now. But Suttons don't break. Vincent, the snake tattoo man, checked his phone again. 17th time in the last hour. Mars had counted. He was scared. She could see it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his leg bounced when he sat, waiting for instructions, waiting to be told what to do next. Derek the Baldwin paced. His limp had gotten worse, the ankle swelling. Mars had kicked it during the abduction. Not hard enough, she thought now, but enough to aggravate an old injury. He winced with every third step. She keeps crying, Derek said, making noise. What if someone hears? It's an abandoned warehouse, Vincent snapped. Who's going to hear? And she's not crying anymore. It was true. Mars had stopped crying 6 hours ago. Crying didn't help. Crying was what they expected. Daddy had taught her better. When you're in trouble, baby girl, you assess, you observe, you find the weakness, you wait for your opening. Mars was waiting. Vincent's phone buzzed. He checked it, swore, read the message again. What? Derek limped closer. They're looking for her. Vincent's voice was tight. Cops and the bikers. 97 Hells Angels spread across Sacramento. Someone saw us. Nobody saw us. Someone saw us. Vincent read from his phone. White van, Virginia plates, physical descriptions. They know everything. Derek's face went pale. How is that possible? We were clean. We checked. There were no witnesses. Apparently there was one. Vincent stood, started pacing. His boots echoed on the concrete. We move her. Tonight. Change locations. The boss said wait until Sunday, but the boss said wait until Sunday. Derek's voice was firm. So we wait. They don't know where we are. This place is off the grid. No cameras, no traffic. No one's finding us before Monday. Vincent wanted to argue. Mars could see it, but he was more scared of the boss than he was of being found. So he nodded, sat back down, checked his phone for the 18th time. Mars filed it all away. They're scared. They don't know what they're doing. They're waiting for orders, which meant somewhere out there someone was giving those orders. Someone who knew her schedule. Someone who knew what exit she used. Someone who had given these men her photo. The thought made her chest tight. Someone close to Daddy. Someone he trusted. She pulled at the rope again. It gave another millimeter. Not enough. Not yet. But Mars Sutton was 8 years old and she had survived this long by being smarter than the men who had taken her. She'd watched them for 22 hours, learned their patterns, understood their weaknesses. She knew Derek's ankle couldn't support a full sprint. She knew Vincent checked his phone obsessively between certain times, distracted by whatever message he was waiting for. She knew the warehouse had stairs she'd heard them climb, which meant multiple floors, which meant multiple escape routes if she could just get free. 1472 Ashmont Drive, she whispered into the darkness. 89th time. Daddy's coming. I know he's coming. At 2:17 a.m., Bite found the van. Got it. His voice cut through the clubhouse like a blade. Enterprise GPS pings every 15 minutes. Last 3 pings came from the same location. 1847 Industrial Parkway. Commercial Warehouse District. Buildings listed as a recording studio. Abandoned for 2 years after the owner went bankrupt. Calloway was on his feet before Bite finished the sentence. How far? 12 minutes by bike, maybe 15 with traffic, but there won't be traffic at this hour. Then we go now. Wait, Bones held up a hand. We don't go in blind. Doc, what's the medical situation if she's been held for 34 hours? Doc Fisher stepped forward. Combat medic training evident in the way he assessed the situation. Dehydration's the main concern. A child her size, no water for over a day, she'll be weak, disoriented, possibly showing early signs of kidney stress. If we find her and she's conscious, I need to get fluids into her within an hour. IV if possible. Oral if not. What about rope burns, restraint injuries? Depends how tight they tied her. Could be superficial. Could be deep enough to leave permanent scarring. Won't know until I see her. Calloway's jaw tightened. And if they hurt her beyond the restraints, Doc's expression softened. Brother, I patched up soldiers in worse shape than anything those bastards could do to an 8-year-old. Whatever they did, I can stabilize her. I can keep her alive. But we need to get to her first. Bones nodded. Gunner, I want 2 teams. Perimeter and entry. Nobody goes in until we know how many we're dealing with. Last thing we need is a hostage situation where they've got a knife to Mars's throat. What about cops? Someone called from the back. We call them when she's safe. Bones looked around the room. Right now, all they'll do is set up a perimeter and negotiate for 6 hours while a little girl sits in the dark wondering if her daddy forgot her. We don't negotiate, we extract. He turned to Silas. Kid, you said the bald one limps on his left leg. Anything else about their mobilities, weaknesses? Silas closed his eyes. In his mind, he was back on that curb watching the kidnapping unfold in perfect clarity. The driver, snake tattoo, he's the muscle. Moved fast, confident, trained. The bald one is slower. When he shoved Mars into the van, he used his right arm more than his left, like he's compensating for the leg. If you take the bald one first, the driver's alone. Bones smiled, cold, calculating. Good, that's good. There's something else. Silas opened his eyes. When they circled the block before they parked, the driver checked his phone twice. He was looking at something. A photo, maybe? Or directions, like he didn't know what Mars looked like until he got there. They were sent. Calloway's voice was ice. Hired. Contract job. Which means there's a third person. Someone who gave them the information. Someone who knew what Mars looked like. What time she got out of school. Which exit she'd use. Every man in the room went still. Bones pulled out his laptop, opened encrypted files from his detective days. If they were sent, they needed payment. Money trail. He looked at Bite. Can you pull financial records for known cartel contractors in the last month? Already on it. Bite's fingers flew across his keyboard. Checking wire transfers, cash movements. Cartel usually pays half up front, half on completion. How much for a kidnapping? Someone asked. Depends on the target. Bite didn't look up. Low risk grab, 20-30,000. High risk witnesses kid before a federal trial. He paused. 75, maybe 100 grand. Jesus, found something. Bite turned his laptop around. Wire transfer, $75,000. Sent to an offshore account 3 weeks ago from a shell company linked to Sinaloa. Second payment of 75 scheduled for Monday, after the trial date. So they grab Mars. Calloway, recants, Navarro walks, kidnappers get paid and release her. Bones shook his head. Except men like this don't release witnesses, which means we have until Sunday night, Calloway said. Maybe 40 hours, before they move her, or worse. Bones looked at the map, looked at the red pin Bite had just placed at Industrial Parkway. Looked at Calloway. Then we bring your daughter home. Tonight. 97 motorcycles rolled out at 2:31 a.m., but they didn't all go to the same place. 20 brothers, the first wave split into 2 teams, 10 for perimeter, 10 for entry. They'd be the ones to breach the warehouse and extract Mars. The rest fanned out across the city, continuing the door-to-door canvass, gathering witness testimonies, building the paper trail that would bury these men in court. Silas rode on the back of Bones's Harley, arms wrapped around the detective's waist, wind slapping against his face like cold hands. The city blurred past in streaks of streetlight and shadow. I'm going to see her, he thought. I'm going to see if she's okay. Please let her be okay. The warehouse appeared at the end of Industrial Parkway like a mouth waiting to swallow them. 3 stories of corrugated steel and broken windows. No lights visible from the outside. No movement. No sound except the distant hum of highway traffic. The bikes killed their horn engines 200 yards out. In the silence that followed, Silas could hear his own heartbeat. Perimeter team go. Bones spoke into a Bluetooth headset voice barely above a whisper. I want eyes on every exit. If anyone tries to run, they don't get far. 10 shadows peeled off from the group, disappeared into the darkness until they became part of it. 2 minutes passed, all exits covered. No movement. 1 vehicle in the lot. White van. Virginia plates. It's them. Bones turned to Calloway. Your call, brother. You want in on the breach? Calloway's face was carved from granite. Try to stop me. They entered through a service door on the east side. The lock gave way under a crowbar wielded by a brother named Tank. 6'4", 280, forearms like tree trunks. The kind of man who could pry open a vault door with determination alone. The metal shrieked once, then went silent. Inside, the darkness was complete. Bones pulled out a tactical flashlight, swept the beam across the floor. Dust, debris, old recording equipment piled in corners like corpses. The air smelled like mold and rust and something else. Food. Burnt food. Someone had been cooking here recently. They're definitely using this place. Bones murmured. Split up. Doc with Calloway. Tank with me. Everyone else clear the ground floor. They moved like ghosts. Silas stayed behind Bones, his sneakers still held together with duct tape making barely a whisper against the concrete. His eyes had adjusted to the darkness now. He could see shapes, outlines, the suggestion of stairs leading up to a second floor, and then he heard it. Squeak. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. The sound of a rubber boot against concrete. Bones. Silas grabbed the biker's arm. I hear her, second floor. That's her rain boot. It squeaks. I heard it when she was walking down the school steps. Bones didn't question. Didn't hesitate. He clicked his headset. Second floor. Go. The stairs groaned under their weight. Silas counted. 17 steps to the first landing. A turn. 14 more to the second floor. His heart hammered so loud he was sure the kidnappers could hear it. At the top, a hallway stretched into darkness. 3 doors on the left, 2 on the right. One at the end slightly ajar. Light bleeding through the crack. Yellow light, like a camping lantern. And then squeak, squeak, squeak. Faster now, frantic, like someone pacing. Bones held up a fist. Stop. He pressed his ear to the closed doors. Listened. Moved on. Paused at the door with the light. Voices, low, male. Boss said, wait until Sunday. We wait until Sunday. She keeps crying, making noise. What if someone hears it's an abandoned warehouse? Who's going to hear? Bones looked at Calloway, held up 2 fingers. 2 hostiles, pointed at the door. Calloway nodded. Inside that room, Mars heard the floorboards creak outside, heard the silence that came before violence. She'd been waiting for this, hoping for this. Her hands were almost free now, the rope hanging by a single strand. Daddy's coming, she thought. I knew he'd come. She positioned herself, remembered what her father had taught her. When chaos starts, baby girl, you create more chaos. You become the variable they didn't plan for. What happened next took 12 seconds. Tank hit the door with his shoulder. The lock shattered like paper. The door exploded inward. Mars kicked Derek's ankle with everything she had. The same ankle she'd observed for 34 hours. The one that was swollen and weak and couldn't support sudden impact. Derek screamed, went down. The distraction gave Tank the opening he needed. Calloway was through the door before it stopped swinging. moving with the speed of a father who had waited 34 hours for this moment. His eyes found Vincent reaching for the gun on the table. Bones was half a second behind Calloway. Tactical flashlight sweeping. Gun. He saw it. Moved faster than a 61-year-old man should be able to move. Had Vincent on the ground before his fingers closed around the grip. Knee in his back, arm wrenched at an angle that dislocated the shoulder with a pop that echoed through the warehouse. Tank was already on Derek. 280 pounds compressing a bald man with a bad ankle into the concrete floor. The screaming stopped when Tank applied pressure to a nerve cluster that made Derek's entire left side go numb. And in the corner, on a bare mattress stained with rust and fear, Mars. I am trembling. But her eyes were fierce. The rope on her wrists hung loose, nearly free. Her father's vest wrapped around her like the armor it had always been. Pink rain boots squeaking one last time as she stood. One strap of her overalls still unhooked, just like Silas remembered. Daddy. The same scream, the same word. But this time everything was different. Calloway crossed the room in 3 strides, fell to his knees beside her, reached for the rope with hands that shook like leaves in a hurricane. Mars, baby girl, I'm here. Daddy's here. Doc was beside them a heartbeat later. Medical kit open, pen light checking her pupils, fingers on her pulse. She's dehydrated, bruised, rope burns on the wrists, nothing arterial, small laceration on the lip, likely bit one of them. Doc's voice caught. She fought back. Of course she did, Calloway whispered. She's a Sutton. Daddy? Mars threw her arms around her father's neck, held on like she would never let go. I knew you'd come. I counted. 1472 Ashmont Drive. 88 times. That's 22 hours. Then I lost count, but I knew you'd find me. Calloway was crying, full silent sobs that shook his frame. Did I do good, Daddy? Did I fight hard enough? I kicked him. I got the rope almost off. Did I help? You did perfect, baby girl. Perfect. Suttons don't break. In the doorway, Silas watched. He didn't know he was crying until he felt the tears hit his collar. Bones's hand landed on his shoulder. Firm, anchoring. You gave her back to him, Bones said quietly. You remember that. By the time the police arrived 20 minutes later, everything was already over. Vincent Mallory, snake tattoo, former Marine turned cartel enforcer, lay face down on the warehouse floor, zip-tied, barely conscious. His left shoulder was dislocated, his nose was broken, blood pooling beneath his face from where it had met concrete with considerable force. He would later tell the police he fell down some stairs, despite there being no staircase anywhere near where they found him. Derek Paulson, bald, missing pinky, bad ankle that was now completely shattered, was in worse shape. Tank had made sure of that. The biker had applied exactly enough pressure to the ankle to ensure Derek would never walk without a limp again. He whimpered in the corner, unable to stand, unable to do anything but wait for the police to arrive and end this nightmare that he'd brought upon himself. The lead detective was a woman named Torres, Maria Torres. She'd worked with Bones during his years on the force, knew him as one of the best detectives Sacramento PD had ever had. She looked at the thumb drive Bones handed her, then at the bikers standing in formation, then at the 2 men on the ground who looked like they'd been through an industrial accident. Jesus Christ, Bones, you could have called us. I did call you. At 4:30 yesterday afternoon when Calloway first reported Mars missing. Your department told him to wait 48 hours before filing a missing person report. That was 17 hours ago. Bones's voice was eerily calm. So we didn't wait. Torres closed her eyes. Pinched the bridge of her nose. That's not protocol. Protocol almost got an 8-year-old girl killed. Bones handed her the drive. Everything's on there. License plate, physical descriptions, GPS data from the rental van, testimony from an eyewitness who saw the abduction and was dismissed by school officials. Vincent Mallory and Derek Paulson. Both have outstanding warrants. Both connected to the Sinaloa cartel. Both hired to kidnap Calloway Sutton's daughter to prevent him from testifying Monday in the Luis Navarro trial. Torres looked at the drive, then at Mars, who was wrapped in a blanket Doc had produced sitting on her father's lap, drinking water from a bottle with shaking hands. The girl okay, dehydrated, minor injuries. She'll live. More than your 48-hour protocol would have given her. Torres had no response to that. The conversation ended there. In the hours that followed, while Mars was checked by paramedics who confirmed Doc's assessment and marveled at how well she'd held up, while Vincent and Derek were loaded into separate ambulances under armed guard, while the FBI was called and federal charges were prepared. Bones made a list of names, people who had seen Mars taken, people who had heard her scream, people who had looked the other way. The guilty witnesses, he called them. And over the next 3 days, 97 Hells Angels made sure every single one of them understood the weight of their choice. Darla Peaton, 46, lived in a house with a 3-car garage in a neighborhood where the HOA sent violation notices if your grass was a 1/4 inch too tall. She drove a silver Lexus SUV, had 2 children, a comfortable life built on the foundation of looking the other way when it was convenient. Sunday morning at 7:15, 2 Hells Angels knocked on her door. She almost called the police. Her hand was on her phone, but something about the way they stood there, patient, silent, like they had all the time in the world, made her pause. Mrs. Peaton, Bones's voice was quiet, professional. At 3:52 p.m. Friday afternoon, you were in the pickup line at Riverside Elementary. A little girl ran toward your car, screaming for help. You rolled up your window and locked your doors. Darla's face went pale. You didn't. What? Bones pulled out his phone. Showed her security footage the bikers had obtained through means that would never hold up in court, but didn't need to. We have this. We have your license plate on 3 different cameras. We have witnesses who saw you look directly at Marlo Sutton and drive away. She was wearing that vest. Darla's voice was barely a whisper. The skull, those patches. I thought it was some kind of family dispute, gang-related. I didn't want to get involved. I have children. What if you'd gotten out of your car and asked one question? Bones leaned forward slightly. Just one. Sweetie, are you okay? That's all it would have taken. 5 seconds. One question. Instead, you saw leather and decided an 8-year-old girl deserved whatever was happening to her. I didn't know. You didn't care to know. That little girl was held for 34 hours because people like you decided she wasn't worth the inconvenience of helping. She was dehydrated. She had rope burns that bled. She bit one of her kidnappers hard enough to draw blood because she was fighting to survive. 8 years old, and you locked your doors. I'm sorry, Darla was crying now. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me. Bones handed her a card. Sacramento Police Department. Detective Maria Torres. You're going to call this number today. You're going to tell her exactly what you saw and why you didn't act. You're going to give a statement. And then you're going to live with the knowledge that when your children need help someday, you better hope the person they run to isn't someone like you. He turned and walked away, left her standing in her doorway, crying, the card in her shaking hand. Terrence Terry Peterson, 71, had been the crossing guard at Riverside Elementary for 9 years. Beloved by children, trusted by parents. He wore a bright orange vest and a smile and took pride in knowing every student by name. When Mars had run to him that Friday afternoon, tears streaming down her face saying, "They took me. Please call 911, he had patted her head and told her to find her daddy. Told her she was being dramatic. Told her everything was fine. Sunday afternoon, a Hells Angel named Professor knocked on Terry's door. Professor was 47, had kind eyes, a counselor's degree, the kind of voice that made people want to confess their sins. They sat at Terry's kitchen table. The old man's hands wouldn't stop shaking. I saw her every morning, Terry whispered. For 3 years, she always waved, always smiled, called me Mr. Terry. And when she actually needed me, I didn't listen. Why not? Professor's voice was gentle, not accusatory, just seeking to understand. I don't know, Terry's voice cracked. She was always so dramatic, always playing games, running around, making up stories. I thought she was pretending. Kids do that, don't they? Make things up, some do. Professor folded his hands on the table. But the ones who run to adults and say, call 911, the ones who are crying real tears and begging for help, those aren't pretending, Mr. Peterson. Those are the ones who need us to pay attention. How do I fix this, Wisham? Not completely, but you can make sure it doesn't happen again. You can tell the police what you saw. You can testify if there's a trial. And you can spend the rest of your time at that school actually listening when a child says something is wrong. Terry nodded, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Will she forgive me? That's not for me to answer. But I know this. She's alive. And part of that is because a homeless boy nobody believed kept trying even after you dismissed him. Maybe think about that. Professor stood, left Terry sitting at his table, hands still shaking, the weight of his failure pressing down on him in a way it never would fully lift. Dr. Patricia Holbrook was the last to be confronted. Monday morning, she was in her office preparing for a school board meeting where she would have to explain the events of Friday afternoon, how a child had been kidnapped, how multiple staff members had been informed, how no one had acted. Her career was already over. She knew it. The district superintendent had called Sunday evening, suggested she might want to consider early retirement, suggested it strongly, but she didn't know just how over until Callaway Sutton appeared in her doorway, his daughter's hand in his. Mars was clean now, fresh clothes. Doc had treated her wrists. Professor had spent 2 hours with her talking through what had happened. She wasn't healed, wouldn't be for a long time. Nightmares would come. Trauma had layers, but she was safe, and she had asked to come here to see the woman who had refused to help. Dr. Holbrook, Callaway's voice was controlled. Barely. My daughter has something to say to you. Holbrook's face went white. Mars, sweetheart. I'm not your sweetheart. Mars's voice was small but steady. You told Silas he was lying. You told him you'd call the police on him. He was trying to help me. He saw them take me, and he ran to tell you, and you threatened him. He was the only one who tried. I've followed protocol, Holbrook said. Her voice sounded hollow even to herself. What protocol says you threaten a child for reporting a crime? Callaway stepped forward. What protocol says you ignore eyewitness testimony because the witness is homeless? What protocol says student safety is our priority? When my daughter was being shoved into a van 50 feet from your office, and you did nothing, I didn't know, you didn't check. Holbrook's mouth opened, closed. No words came. There were no words. I've already filed complaints, Callaway continued. School board, district superintendent, State Department of Education, civil rights violation for discriminating against a homeless witness, child endangerment for failing to act on a credible report of kidnapping. You're going to lose your job. That's already in motion. But I want you to know something, Dr. Holbrook. She waited. That boy you dismissed. He has a photographic memory. His description of the kidnappers was so accurate, the FBI used it to link them to 3 other kidnappings across 3 states. His license plate match led us directly to the warehouse. He gave us the physical descriptions that let us identify them as cartel contractors. He did what you refused to do. He paid attention. He listened. He acted. Callaway paused. You had a bronze plaque on your desk that says, "Student safety is our priority." My daughter is alive because a homeless 13-year-old boy made her his priority when you made her your problem. He turned, walked out. Mars followed. At the doorway she paused, looked back at the bronze plaque. That's a lie, Mars said quietly. And then she left. Patricia Holbrook sat at her desk for a long time after they were gone, staring at that plaque, knowing she would never work in education again, knowing she deserved it. Vincent Mallory broke during interrogation. It took 6 hours. An FBI interrogation room, Special Agent Rebecca Torrens and her partner. The promise of a deal that might keep him from dying in prison. $75,000, he said finally. $75,000 to grab the girl, bring her to the warehouse, keep her there until Monday, make the father recant his testimony. Who hired you? Vincent looked at his lawyer, then back at the agents. I want immunity, not happening. But we can talk about reducing your sentence. Federal kidnapping carries life. Conspiracy to obstruct justice adds another 20. Help us, and maybe you see daylight before you're 90. Vincent was 42. The math was simple. I never met him. Just got a call on a burner phone 3 weeks ago. He had details. Everything. The girl's schedule, which exit she used, photo of her in that vest, told us exactly when to grab her. The photo. Where did it come from? He sent it to the burner. Vincent rubbed his face. Some kind of family event. Barbecue, maybe. She was standing with a bunch of bikers. One of them had his arm around her, called her Mars in the caption. Do you still have the phone? Vincent shook his head. Destroyed it. But the cloud backup might still have the data. If your tech people can pull it, they could. 3 hours later, they had the photo and the metadata embedded in the file. Date taken October 27th, 2024. Location Hells Angels. Sacramento Clubhouse 4200, Stockton Boulevard. Camera iPhone 12. Registered to Malcolm Ferguson. Uncle Forge. The FBI came for him Monday evening. He was at the clubhouse, sitting at the bar, drinking bourbon that tasted like ash, waiting. He'd known they would figure it out eventually. Metadata, financial forensics, the gambling debt that had turned him into a traitor. He'd known from the moment he took that photo, told himself it was just a family picture, nothing suspicious about photographing a barbecue, that eventually it would lead back to him. Malcolm Ferguson, FBI. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, conspiracy to obstruct justice, child endangerment, and racketeering. Forge didn't resist, didn't speak, just held out his wrists for the handcuffs. Calloway was there, standing 20 feet away. Mars was home with Vera and Silas, safe. But Calloway had wanted to be here for this, needed to see it. Why? His voice was raw. You were family. You held her when she was born. You promised Rachel you'd protect her. Forge looked at him, tears streaming down his face now. I owed $180,000, casino debt. They said they'd kill me, cut me into pieces, leave me in the desert. I didn't think, I swear to God, I didn't think they'd actually hurt her. I thought they'd just scare you, make you recant, then let her go. You gave them my daughter. I know. Sorry doesn't bring back 34 hours. Calloway stepped forward. Bones put a hand on his shoulder, held him back. Sorry doesn't erase what she went through. What she'll remember every time she closes her eyes. What she'll carry for the rest of her life. I know, Forge whispered. You're done. Calloway's voice was ice. You're not a brother anymore. You're not family. You're nothing. The FBI led Forge away. Calloway watched him go, felt nothing. The man he'd called brother for 19 years. The man who'd been at his wedding, who'd held his wife's hand when she died, who'd promised to always protect Mars. Gone. In its place, a stranger who'd sold a child for gambling debts. Bones stood beside him in the silence. After a moment, he spoke. Federal conspiracy charges, child endangerment. He'll get 15 years minimum. Probably closer to 20, good Calloway said. But his voice was hollow. That night, Mars couldn't sleep. She'd tried. Vera had made up the pull-out couch in Silas's apartment. The bikers had moved quickly, getting Vera and Silas into temporary housing within 24 hours of the rescue. Mars was staying there while Calloway dealt with the FBI and the police reports and the mountain of legal proceedings that came with taking down a cartel operation. She lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of the city. So different from the silence of the warehouse. So different from the sound of her own voice counting squeaks. A soft knock on the door. Silas checking on her. Can't sleep, he asked quietly. Mars shook her head. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there. Silas sat down on the floor beside the couch. When my mom and I first started living in the car, I couldn't sleep either. Every sound made me think someone was going to make us leave. Every light made me think it was the police coming to arrest us for trespassing. What did you do? My mom taught me a trick. When your brain won't stop, you give it something else to focus on. Something good. She had me name 5 things I was grateful for. Every night, even when it seemed like there was nothing. Mars was quiet for a moment. Then Daddy. That's one. He came for me, just like I knew he would. That's a good one. Silas, you saw me when nobody else did. That's 2. Silas felt his throat tighten. My boots. Mars almost smiled. I know it's silly, but they squeaked, and that's how you found me. So I'm grateful for my squeaky boots. Not silly at all. Uncle Bones, he believed you. That's 4. Mars paused. And the rope. I know that's weird, but I'm grateful it wasn't tighter. That I could work on it. That I could help when Daddy came. That's 5. Those are really good things, Silas said. They sat in comfortable silence. After a while, Mars's breathing slowed, deepened. She was asleep. Silas stayed there on the floor, keeping watch, making sure nightmares didn't come. The trial began Monday morning, November 18th, Federal Courthouse. Sacramento. The building was designed to intimidate. marble floors, vaulted ceilings. The kind of architecture that made every footstep echo, that made you feel small, made you remember that justice was bigger than any individual. In the gallery, 47 Hells Angels sat in perfect formation, leather vests cleaned and pressed, faces impassive. They weren't there to threaten, weren't there to intimidate the jury. They were there to witness, to support, to remind Calloway that he wasn't alone. And in the front row, holding Doc's hand because her father was about to testify and she didn't want to be alone, sat Marlo Sutton. She'd asked to come. Professor had counseled against it. You don't need to see this, sweetheart. You don't need to relive it. But Mars had insisted. He's doing this for me. The least I can do is be there for him. So there she was, 8 years old. Pink rain boots because she'd refused to wear anything else. The bruises on her wrists still visible despite the long sleeves of her dress. Mr. Sutton, the prosecutor's voice was clear. Can you describe what you saw at the truck stop on January 15th of last year? Calloway looked at the defense table. Luis El Fantasma Navarro sat in an orange jumpsuit, expression carefully blank. The man who had ordered Mars's kidnapping, who had tried to silence Calloway through terror, who had almost succeeded. Then Calloway looked at Mars, at his daughter, safe, alive, here. Yes, ma'am, I can describe exactly what I saw. And for the next 2 hours he did. Every detail, every face, every gunshot, the way the victim had begged, the way Navarro had smiled, the cold calculation in a killer's eyes. The jury listened in silence. Some took notes, some just stared. All of them understood they were hearing testimony that had almost never been given, that had nearly been silenced through the kidnapping of a child. When Calloway finished, the prosecutor had one more question. Mr. Sutton, you knew that testifying would put you and your daughter in danger. Why did you agree to do it? Calloway looked at Mars again. Because I want her to grow up in a world where good people don't look away, where doing the right thing matters, where men like Luis Navarro face consequences for their actions. He paused. And because my daughter taught me something. When she was taken, a homeless 13-year-old boy was the only person who tried to help her. Everyone else, teachers, administrators, other parents, they all looked away. They all made excuses. But not him. He saw something wrong and he refused to stop trying until someone listened. Calloway's voice got stronger. If a homeless kid can stand up to indifference and keep fighting, then I can stand up to a cartel and tell the truth. My daughter deserves that. Every child deserves that. The defense had no questions. The jury deliberated for 67 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Luis Navarro would spend the rest of his life in ADX Florence, the Supermax in Colorado. 23 hours a day in a concrete cell, no human contact, no possibility of parole, no escape. When the verdict was read, Mars squeezed Doc's hand and whispered, "Daddy did it." Doc squeezed back. "Yes, little one, he did." But the trials weren't over. Vincent Mallory and Derek Paulson faced separate proceedings: federal kidnapping, assault on a minor, conspiracy to obstruct justice, racketeering. The list went on. The prosecutor asked if Mars wanted to testify. "You don't have to," she said gently. "We have enough evidence to convict without your testimony." But Mars wanted to speak. Needed to. The judge was hesitant. "She's 8 years old. She's the victim," the prosecutor countered. "She has a right to be heard if she chooses." The judge looked at Mars. At this tiny girl in a dress too formal for a child, at the pink rain boots she'd insisted on wearing. "Do you understand what testifying means?" the judge asked. "You'll have to talk about what happened. The defense attorneys might ask you questions." "I understand," Mars said. "I want to tell what happened." The courtroom went silent as Mars climbed into the witness box. Her feet didn't touch the floor. A bailiff brought her a booster cushion so she could see over the rail. "Can you state your name for the record?" "Marlo Lucille Sutton. But everyone calls me Mars." "How old are you?" "Mars 8. "I'll be 9 next month. Can you tell us what happened on November 15th? Mars took a deep breath. "Two men took me." She pointed at Vincent and Derek sitting at separate tables. "Them. I was leaving school and the man with the tattoo said my daddy sent him, but that was a lie. Daddy always picks me up. Or Uncle Bones. Or one of the brothers. Never strangers. What happened when you told them no? He grabbed my arm. She pointed at Vincent. Really hard. It hurt. I tried to run, but he was too strong. So I bit him. Tasted like blood. The courtroom was utterly silent. Then what happened? They put me in a van, tied my hands with rope, put me in a dark room with no windows. I was there for, she paused, counted silently, 34 hours and about 20 minutes. I kept track by saying my address like my daddy taught me. Your address, 1472. Ashmont Drive. My daddy taught me when I was 5. If you get lost, you say your address until someone safe finds you. And did someone find you? My daddy found me and Uncle Bones and all the brothers. She looked at Silas in the gallery. Because Silas saw them take me and he remembered everything and he told Uncle Bones and Uncle Bones believed him. What did you do while you were being held? I tried to be brave, like my daddy taught me. Suttons don't break. I looked for weaknesses. The bald man's ankle was hurt. The man with the tattoo was scared. He kept looking at his phone. I worked on the rope, tried to get it loose. Did you get it loose? Almost. By the time Daddy came, I could almost get my hands free. And when they burst through the door, I kicked the bald man's ankle as hard as I could. Because I wanted to help. I didn't want to just wait to be saved. The prosecutor smiled gently. You're very brave, Mars. The defense attorneys didn't cross-examine. What could they ask? How could they challenge the testimony of an 8-year-old who'd survived 34 hours of captivity? The jury deliberated 43 minutes. Guilty. All counts. Vincent Mallory got 28 years in federal prison. Derek Paulson got 32 because of prior convictions. Malcolm Ferguson tried separately, received 15 years. When it was over, when all the verdicts had been read and all the sentences pronounced, Calloway knelt in front of Mars in the courthouse hallway. You did good, baby girl. I was scared the whole time. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared and you do it anyway. You survived. You fought. You helped in your own rescue. I'm so proud of you. Mars hugged him, held tight. When she pulled back, she looked past him to where Silas stood with Bones and Vera. Can I talk to him? Of course. Mars walked over, looked up at Silas. He was almost twice her height, but she seemed bigger in this moment. Thank you, she said, for seeing me, for not giving up when nobody believed you. You saved my life. Silas's eyes welled up. I'm really glad you're okay. Mars held out her hand. Friends? Silas shook it. Friends. The room voted at 8:47 Tuesday morning. 1 week after the rescue. The trial concluded, the kidnapper sentenced. Mars safe at home with her father. Silas and Vera still in temporary housing, but with job interviews scheduled in a future that looked nothing like the past 7 months. Preacher stood at the head of the table. Gray beard, weathered face. The weight of leadership evident in every line. We found Ironside's daughter because of this boy. His voice was gravel and smoke. Silas Brennan, 13 years old, living in a car with his mother because the world decided they weren't worth helping. He paused, let every eye in the room settle on him. The world was wrong. Nods around the table. I'm proposing we do something about it. The chapter fund has enough for first month's rent plus security deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment. Vera Brennan has 11 years experience as a 911 dispatcher. I've already reached out to the county sheriff's department. They're willing to interview her Thursday morning. They need experienced people. She's experienced. More nods. Silas needs to be back in school, needs stability, needs people who don't look at him and see a problem. Who see what we see? A kid who saved a life. Preacher looked around the table. All in favor. For a moment, nothing. Just the ticking of a clock on the wall. The distant hum of motorcycles outside. The sound of a brotherhood waiting to decide. Then every single hand went up. Not a moment's hesitation. Not a single dissenting voice. 97 men voting unanimously to help a woman and child they'd known for 1 week. Motion carries. Preacher smiled. A rare sight. Bones make it happen. The apartment was small but clean. 2 bedrooms, kitchen with a window that actually opened to let in air that didn't smell like parking lot exhaust. Bathroom with a shower that produced hot water. A living room with space for a couch. To Silas, who had spent 7 months living in a Honda Accord, it looked like a palace. This is yours. Bones handed Vera the keys. First month plus security deposit covered. There's a list of resources on the counter. Food bank, clothing assistance, medical clinic, and your interview with the sheriff's department is Thursday at 10 a.m. Vera looked at the keys in her hand. I don't understand. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why you don't owe us anything? You're right, we don't owe you anything. Bones looked at Silas, standing in the doorway of what would be his bedroom, staring at the bed like he'd never seen one before. But your son saved a little girl's life. He did something 97 grown men couldn't have done without him. He saw what everyone else missed. He refused to stop trying when every authority figure told him to give up. That matters. Vera started crying, silent tears that spoke of 7 months of fear and exhaustion and the crushing weight of failure finally lifting. When I was a cop, Bones continued, I saw the worst of humanity every single day. I saw what people do to each other when they think nobody's watching. I saw cruelty, selfishness, indifference, and I started to believe that's all there was. He paused. Your son proved me wrong, standing on that curb crying because nobody would listen, but refusing to leave, refusing to give up. That's not nothing, Mrs. Brennan. That's everything. Also, Bones added with a slight smile, we need good dispatchers. County Sheriff's Department just lost 2 to budget cuts. You've got 11 years experience and a son with a photographic memory who can probably feed you license plates in his sleep. They'd be idiots not to hire you. Vera laughed, a wet, broken sound that was half sob, half relief. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much, don't thank me. Bones nodded toward Silas. Thank him. 6 months later, the world looked completely different. Vera was a 911 dispatcher again. Not for Sacramento PD. They'd made it clear she wasn't welcome back, but for the county sheriff's department. Better pay, better benefits. A schedule that let her be home when Silas finished school. She still cried sometimes in the shower, where she thought he couldn't hear. But they were different tears now. Relief instead of despair. Gratitude instead of grief. Silas was back in school, Lincoln Middle School, 8th grade. A building full of strangers who didn't know about the Honda Accord or the eviction or the 7 months of parking lots. He kept mostly to himself, still getting used to having friends, to being seen as something other than the homeless kid. But he was there, learning, growing, sleeping in a bed instead of a back seat. His new watch read 2:37 p.m. when the text came through. Party at Clubhouse, Saturday 3 p.m. You and your mom invited, Mars insists. Bones Silas smiled. The clubhouse had become a second home over the past 6 months. Not in any official way. He wasn't a member, would never wear a patch. But he was welcome, always welcome. The brothers remembered what he'd done, treated him like family. And Mars had become his friend. They talked every week, sometimes about what had happened, more often about normal things. School, books. The fact that Mars was convinced unicorns were real and was very disappointed to learn they weren't. The party was for Mars's 9th birthday. Red and white streamers hung from the clubhouse rafters. Her favorite colors. A 3-tier cake dominated the center table. Chocolate with raspberry filling. Because Doc had asked her 17 times what flavor she wanted, and she'd finally admitted that chocolate raspberry was the only correct answer, and would he please stop asking. 97 motorcycles were parked in the lot outside. Not all the same brothers who had answered the call 6 months ago. Some had moved, some had retired, some had simply returned to their regular lives. But enough, more than enough to fill the room with laughter and stories and the rumble of voices that sounded like family. Silas stood at the edge of the crowd, watching, still not entirely comfortable being the center of attention. Mars spotted him first. Silas, she ran across the room. Pink rain boots, brand new but still with unicorn stickers because some things never change, squeaking against the concrete with every step. She slammed into him with a hug that nearly knocked him off his feet. You came, of course I came. Silas hugged her back. Careful, gentle. Happy birthday, Mars. I'm 9 now. She said it like it was the most important announcement in the history of the universe. That's basically a teenager. That's not how math works. Close enough. Silas laughed, genuinely laughed, something he'd done more in the past 6 months than in the previous 3 years combined. Calloway appeared behind his daughter, bottle of root beer in his hand. He looked different now, more relaxed, less haunted. The trial was over. Navarro was in Supermax. The cartel had moved on to other targets, other pressures, other nightmares, and Mars was safe, healing. Still had nightmares sometimes, but Professor was helping with that, teaching her tools to process trauma, to understand that what happened wasn't her fault. Good to see you, Silas. Calloway offered his free hand. You too, sir. Silas shook it. How's school? Good, really good, actually. I'm Silas paused. I'm on the honor roll. First time ever. That's outstanding. Calloway's pride was genuine. Your mom must be proud. She cried when she saw the report card. Happy crying, though. That's the best kind. Mars tugged on Silas's sleeve. Come see my cake. Doc made it, and there are sparklers. Indoor sparklers. Those exist. They're not real fire, but they look like it, and that's what counts. She dragged him toward the cake. Still intact. Candles not yet lit. Already surrounded by leather-clad bikers, all pretending they didn't want a piece ahead of schedule. Later, after the cake was cut and the presents were open, and Mars had declared she would never take off her new helmet pink with flame decals sized perfectly for the back of her daddy's Harley Preacher, called for silence. The room went quiet. Respect for the elder, for the man who'd founded this chapter decades ago. 6 months ago, he said, I stood in this room and asked you to vote to help a woman and a boy we didn't know, because that boy had done something extraordinary. He looked at Silas. Today I want to acknowledge what happened next. Silas Brennan is back in school, on a roll. His mother is back at work, dispatcher for the county, saving lives again. They have a home, they have stability, they have a future. Nods around the room, murmurs of agreement. But more than that, they have family. Not blood, not patches, just people who saw them, who chose them, who refused to let them fall through the cracks of a system that doesn't care about people like us. Preacher raised his glass to Silas Brennan, the one who saw. 97 glasses rose in unison, the one who saw. Silas's eyes burned. He didn't look away as Mars squeezed his hand, didn't hide the tears that slipped down his cheeks. Because these weren't tears of shame or failure or exhaustion. These were the tears of someone who had been lost and was finally found. This story isn't about bikers. It's not about kidnapping or cartels or courtroom drama. It's not about the $75,000 that changed hands or the life sentence that ended a cartel enforcer's freedom. This story is about a boy who paid attention when nobody else would. It's about an 8-year-old girl who recited her address in the darkness because her daddy taught her that hope was a discipline, that survival was a choice you made every 15 minutes. It's about a father who almost lost everything and learned that family means more than blood. That brotherhood isn't just patches and motorcycles. It's showing up at 2 in the morning. It's believing a homeless kid when everyone else calls him a liar. It's voting unanimously to help strangers because it's the right thing to do. And it's about 97 men who dropped their lives to rescue a child they'd never met. Because that's what it means to be family. The world is full of people like Dr. Patricia Holbrook. People who see problems and look away. Who hear cries for help and dismiss them as inconvenient. Who build careers on words like safety and priority, while actual children slip through their fingers like water. But the world is also full of people like Silas Brennan, 13 years old, homeless, hungry, invisible to everyone who should have seen him. And still he ran across that street. Still he grabbed that teacher's arm. Still he burst into the principal's office and told the truth even when they threatened to call the police on him. Still he sat on that curb and refused to leave because somewhere in that city, a little girl needed her daddy and nobody else cared enough to find her. That's the lesson. You don't need 97 motorcycles to change someone's life. You don't need a leather vest or a road name or a chapter vote. You don't need official permission or institutional approval or a bronze plaque that says student safety is our priority. You just need to see, really see, and then you need to act. If you're listening to this right now, there's someone in your life who needs you to see them. A neighbor whose lights are always off. A child who flinches when adults raise their voices. A coworker who stopped smiling 6 months ago. A student who sits alone at lunch. You don't know their story. You might never know their story, but you know that something is wrong, and you have a choice. You can be Darla Piton, rolling up your window and locking your doors. You can be Dr. Patricia Holbrook, following protocols that protect the institution instead of the child. You can be every person who saw Silas Brennan sitting on that curb and decided he wasn't worth the trouble of asking if he was okay. Or you can be Bones. One man, one moment. Three words that changed everything. I believe you. That's all it took. That's all it ever takes. See someone. Believe them. Act. You're never too old to make that choice. Never too set in your ways. Never too tired or too busy or too comfortable. Bones was 61 when he knelt on that wet asphalt and chose to believe a homeless boy everyone else had dismissed. 61. With decades of seeing the worst of humanity. With every reason to be cynical. To assume the kid was lying or confused or looking for attention. But he chose to listen. Chose to believe. Chose to act. And that choice saved a life. What choice will you make? Silas checks his watch now out of habit. Not compulsion, the face reads whatever time it actually is. Not frozen at 3:47. Not a reminder of everything he lost. Just a watch. Just time. Just the ordinary magic of a life that keeps moving forward. The inscription on the back has faded slightly from 6 months of wear, but he knows what it says. Traces the letters sometimes late at night when his mother is asleep and the apartment is quiet, and he needs to remember that he matters. SB, the one who saw. 11/15/24. The date Marlo Sutton was taken. The date Silas Brennan refused to stop trying. The date 97 strangers became family. He was 13 years old when he saved a little girl's life. He was nobody to everyone who should have helped him. Every authority figure, every adult, every person with the power to act. And he changed everything. Not through violence, not through wealth or connections or institutional power, through observation, through memory, through the stubborn refusal to accept that some lives matter less than others, through seeing what everyone else missed, through believing that one voice, even a voice society had decided didn't matter, could change the world. He was right. You are not nobody. You are the one who sees, and someone out there is waiting for you to save them. All you have to do is pay attention. Remember, and refuse to stop trying when everyone else tells you to give up. That's the story. That's the lesson. That's everything.